And when we did the roundtable, we were like, okay, how many people do you think you can bring? Or how much do you think you're going to bring in? Right. Because nobody's signed into the investor portal under your name. And he goes 3. And we're like, oh, 300,000. He's like, no, 3 people. We were like, oh, that's $400,000 short, and like, it's like
a
a
math
big
problem. It's a math problem. We get, it's new math.
I was like, I can deal with 300K. Like we can find the extra 200, but yeah.
And so like, the reason I share that is just because like, after that, I was like, I have to ask like much different questions going forward. Right. Like I said earlier, like, how often are you actually communicating with your like list? Like, how often do you reach out to them? How often do you see them? Like, are you sending them surveys? Because so many people, like, a huge part of this, actually, no, all of syndications is capital raising, right? Because it's a money, business. If you have no money, you don't have a deal. And so, sorry, I forgot what I was going to say.
About asking tough questions to your
I guess it's just like getting really vulnerable and like deep, because those are like difficult questions to ask, right? It's almost like a defensive question, like, well, how much money do you think you could bring? Some people are like, oh, well, 500K or $1 million. And when you ask like, well, why do you think that number? Like, they also have to reflect and be like, oh, now I have to figure out that answer. And so something I like definitely recommend is sending out surveys. So like, we do that now, we will continue to do that going forward. And like, the whole point of the survey, definitely do not gear it just towards money. Like, make it all about the individual. Like, oh, what would you like to see more for us? We want to tailor like our communication to fit your style better. But you'll find that people on your list will probably invest that you didn't think, but you'll also be able to reflect and be like, oh, like these people that I thought would invest aren't actually going to invest at this time, right? Because another big thing is that if your passive investors like aren't constantly hearing from you, and I don't mean constantly like weekly, even like monthly, like if you're not doing an update or something, they will forget about you in the back of their mind because they're seeing other deals. And they'll go with like the person who is showing up more often. Yes, people do invest in sponsors and not always the deal, but like, you also don't know the relationships that your LPs have with other people, right? And that's huge within itself. So just from like a capital raise standpoint, I guess, to bring it all together, just make sure that like for your partners, like you are asking those like pretty deep, like vulnerable questions, just because you don't want to be in the position where Michael and I were, where we're like, okay, we cannot sleep. Our lives are over if we don't close on this deal. We're going to get like kicked out of real estate. Right. And like, even a big
you're already in another country anyway. So you got that part, because we're all going to move if we fail anyway, right? We're going to move. Well, you got that down, right? You're set there, but no, that's true though. But asking those questions, and I like what you said, as far as, going that one step further. Well, why do you think you can raise that? And sometimes that's tough. Well, I talked to my buddy and he's got this much. Well, he had that much, 2 weeks ago or 2 years ago when you talked to him, but he may not even have half of that right now when he's, make the check out to, to cash, what do you mean? That's good. That's good advice. I like that.
Yeah, because we're like all saying like, oh, we want our money to work for us. And that does not mean that people are going to wait around, like 6 months for a year for you to make their money work for them. Like, if people can find new opportunities, they will. But then another thing too with raising capital. So we did like our investment webinar on a Thursday. And then like the weekend went around. And after we had raised like that initial $1 million, within like a day and a half, once the weekend comes, like we didn't hear anything. And that too was when we were like, oh, what are we going to do? Because it was our first one. And people don't actually tell you how scary capital raising is if the money doesn't come in immediately. But like what someone told us was that like, although this is the most important thing happening in our life, that does not mean that your investors, like this is even very significant to them. And that's definitely something to remember, because you go into the conversations so much differently. Like that follow-up, it does not sound desperate anymore, right? Because it's like, hey, do you have any questions? I'd love to be there for you. Instead of having your heart race be like, I need this person to say yes because I need to be able to close, right? Like the whole mindset shift, like knowing that this is not the most important thing happening to them. You know, like they have family time, they have weekend time, they have a job. It's just remembering that although it is the most important thing for, like I said, the most important thing for you, it is not for your others. So like just go into each conversation with that grace.
Yeah. And so the key takeaway from that is host your investment webinars on like a Tuesday. So you have Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday to continue to follow up and get them before the weekend. Mondays are a little sketchy because everybody forgets things on Monday. But yeah, Tuesday, already started the week, but it's not too far in the week. You still have time to raise capital at the end of the week. So yeah. And the other key takeaway from raising capital, and we've heard this from multiple times from other people, is 10% of your list is going to invest with you on your first deal, right? And that actually rang pretty true for us. I think at that time, I think we had like 165 people on our list, and when 16 people invested. Since then, also what's incredible about having your first deal is the amount of referrals you get after the first deal. So since then, that our list is like doubled. And yeah, so I guess what I'm trying to say is that if you're trying to raise 500K and the minimum that you're going to be, your minimum investment is 50, and so you're talking to your investors about minimum investment 50, you need to be able to have at least 100 people on your list because 10 people are going to actually get to invest. If that makes sense.
Yeah, especially if you don't have like those super high net like worth individuals on your team, right? Because I mean, deep down, I wish that we had like that list of 20 where like those 20 people like were constantly investing just like high amounts, and that's nothing that we had to worry about. But like Michael and I aren't in that position right now. So like we, for a while too, we were doing like 20 to 25 investor calls a week, just because we were like, okay, in order to be able to close like honest indication and raise that capital, we need to have more exposure. And so we just made sure that we created that exposure for us.
Mm-hmm.
When you said investor calls, you were what, reaching out to people that you met at all these events and stuff you were doing and just kind of getting to know them and stuff? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. So like a little tip was that like during conferences and even during meetups now, like everybody puts their information in the chat. Probably 1 out of 20 times somebody actually reached out to Michael and I, and we're like, okay, if people aren't actually reaching out, like there's something missing, right? So we started reaching out to everyone. So like at some points, like we probably like after a conference, we probably reached out to 100 people, because we were like, if a list was made or if people are putting their information in the chat, we're like, no, we're going to do exactly what these people expected, like they put their contact information in there. Why would we not reach out? And that's where we were getting investor calls. We were like, hey, like we'd love to get to know you better. Like here's our connection from, let's say like the Best Ever conference or Adam Adams conference or whatever conference it was. Like we'd like to have that one-on-one to learn more about you and your goals.
Cool. We could stop there. We could start answering questions.
Okay,
Pat,
that's
there's
great.
a couple of questions in the chat here. Let's see. Chris and Alicia asked, what system did you use to track your data for investors, conversations, investor response, things like that? So we started with MailChimp and quickly outgrew that and moved to ActiveCampaign. ActiveCampaign, hands down the most powerful CRM out there, in my opinion. After looking at all the free options and looking at all the paid options and like HubSpot and things like that, and ActiveCampaign, hands down best. And you can integrate it with so many different things. So you at first, like you had to integrate everything through Zapier, or however you say it. But now there's so many integrations that they have built in, and it's just incredible. So like with that, like going back to you have a question about the questionnaire as well. So there's this thing called Cervicate, and I was kind of mentioning this earlier. Cervicate is a survey. It's a free survey tool that actually integrates with ActiveCampaign. And we send out a survey through our ActiveCampaign with a link. And when the person that gets the email actually clicks on the survey, it looks like the survey is anonymous because you don't put a name, email, or anything like that, but it captures your email coming into the survey from the email that it was sent to, if that makes sense. So it looks like it's anonymous, but it's not. And then we're able to capture that information that was on the survey and actually populate our CRM with that, which is pretty cool too. So like one of the questions we asked is like, what asset classes are you interested in? Because we're thinking of expanding beyond multifamily into maybe triple net lease industrial or things like that. So we wanted to probe our investor list to see who's actually interested. And so now we can sort those answers and see how many people are actually interested. And that all the information is in our CRM. We don't have to copy and paste it from a survey or something like that, which is pretty cool. Jim, you have a question?
Yes, thanks guys for sharing. I really appreciate that. You said early on that when you're on your deal, you structured your loan, I think, to so you weren't forced to have to sell. You didn't have to sell it 5 to 7 years. If it wasn't the right time, you could hold out to 20. Do you position that to your investors? They, looking for a time limit when they want you guys to sell, or are they okay with staying on board for the long haul if necessary?
So yeah, in our webinar, we said that our business plan is for 5 to 7 years, and we do plan on exiting the property when we meet the returns. However, we said we have the opportunity, if necessary, to hold the property if the market doesn't make sense to sell at that time. So if we needed to hold it for 7, 8, 9 years, and so we can exit where it makes the most sense for our investors to make the most money back, and ensure that we get top dollar for our property, then we will do that. And I think that lowers the risk threshold, I guess, for a lot of investors as well. To like, okay, cool, like they're thinking about these other things, to help reduce the risk. If that makes sense.
Got it. Now, have you now your other you haven't found another deal as of yet? Are your investors now kind of clamoring for you to find that next deal?
Yeah, so that's a great question. They are. There's several people like chomping at the bit, and they have been since they weren't able to get on the last deal because their referral, and it was a 506B, so they couldn't come on because we didn't have a pre-existing relationship. So like now we've had a relationship with those people, and now they're looking for the next deal. So I think the rate at which you need to have deals is like once you start getting deals is like once a quarter, or like at least 3 times a year. I think that's what Neil Bawa says. And that just keeps your investor list growing, but also those people who want to invest in every single deal, it keeps them ready and poised to invest with you. Let's see. Someone asked, are you actively managing investors or promoting your real estate business? We are pretty active with follow-ups. And yeah, we try to follow up as much as we can. And we also try to produce as much content as possible because those are different touch points we can. So we put out content like once a week. We also post on social media like 3 times a week. And now I'm starting to make videos as well to explain like simple real estate stuff, walking.
Well, simple to him.
Yeah. Simple, like, yeah, just like definitions and things like that. Not like complicated like waterfall structures or anything like that, but just like definitions. And so we're just starting to put out more and more content. So like, we don't have to be as active, like reaching out to somebody and like talking to them, but like, being that presence, being at top of mind for all our investors, I think is really important.
Well, and like, even with promoting our real estate business, I think it's like changed how that goes, right? Because like everyone wants exposure. So we like tweaked it a bit, right? So like instead of like now joining every single conference possible, like we have gotten much more comfortable with like being on podcasts and being on webinars just like this, So like that in itself, like you're promoting your business, but like you're dedicating that hour instead of dedicating like your whole entire day to reaching out to people. So I think that was a big shift in how like you want that exposure.
Yeah, because they're using their audience to obviously use the explosion there. One podcast goes to 5, 6, 7, 8,000 downloads, and I could see that. That's true. Mm-hmm. Stephen asked a question. He came late. Do you have skin in the game on your first deal, or was it no money down situation?
Yeah, so because we went with agency debt, agency does require you to have like at least 10% in the deal as a general partnership. So of that, you know, and it doesn't have to be 10% yourself, right? But and 10%, what I mean by 10% of the capital raise. And so for that, it was like $175,000, but that's not of 1.75, right? Because it's 10%. You know, Suzy and I didn't put $175,000 into it, but across the general partnership team, we did.
Okay, cool.
That was the plan. Yeah.
Gotcha. So now, at what point, I know you had a little bit of anxiety there that weekend. At what point was it where you said, okay, wow, I think we're going to do this, right? Was it that couple weeks later? Was it a couple days later after you raised that initial bundle? When did the last part come in?
So it actually happened pretty quick, you know, like it was a, let's see. So right after the webinar, with the next day or whatever, we had $1 million raised. I was like, cool, we only have like 750 left. Because it's like either your first million or the last million you have to raise is like 2 milestones, right? And so even though Suzy and I were not sleeping for like several days straight, it felt like an eternity, but it actually turned out to be like another, you know, 7 or 10 days after that. And that we had raised all the money, even with the hiccup with one of our partners. So yeah, but yeah, I've never, you know, dropped into so many Facebook DMs or Instagram DMs in my entire life. So yeah, everybody that I knew, like I thought I had scraped everybody on Facebook, and we went back through and scraped everybody again, you know, from high school and everything like that. So the tough thing is, like, with your family and friends, I'll say this, like, your family and friends know you as the person that you grew up to be or the person you were before real estate. They will hop in on your second, third, or fourth deal. They won't get on your first one. So don't bank on your friends, because like some of my friends, like really close friends, like I've grown up with, like we would die for each other. Like they will not invest. They're like, I'll get on the third or fourth one, man. I'm going to watch how this bit pans out. I was like, these people that have known me for like 3 or 4 months are willing to, you know, invest with me, and they trust me and stuff like that because they know me as Michael, the real estate investor, right? That's who I am to them. But to my friends and family, like I'm Michael, you know,
The guy lives in London and reads a lot.
Or something. Yeah,
so, well, I mean, to me, you're kind of sketchy because you don't have a TV. That's where I'm like, ooh, shit, I don't know. You can't do binging of Netflix. Ooh, although you probably have an iPad, so you know, I take that back. But
we at least have a computer.
No, that's true. That's true. Well, that's good advice too, because you're right. Because you go start reaching out to people, and I appreciate you guys sharing that too. Is right. They know you what you are, and I've kind of done that a little bit too. Is when I start telling people how to do real estate, oh my God, oh really? And you start sharing it in different circles, like at your work or job or other people. You're like, wow, I thought you were a program manager. I thought you were this. Yeah, I do this as well. And you're like, oh my gosh, I didn't know that. So interesting. Anybody else have any questions? I don't want to dominate the questions here. Goodness gracious.
No, you're okay. Lorraine asked a question. She said, my question is, how do you manage beginners burnout? And I think that's huge, right? Because especially like with even being in lockdown and all we did was do like our W-2 and then real estate, it's like reflecting on your why every single day. So like when your why is bigger than you find that passion to like wake up every day and just continue to do it, right? Because like when you don't have that connection, it just feels like work and you don't want it to feel like work. And so something that we do is that like in the morning, we have a morning routine, but like the bottom part is like our like whole affirmation, and like you can add your why into that as well. But saying that every day and writing that out every single day over and over and over, like gives you the reason to not have that burnout. I mean, if you're feeling burnt out or if you're ever feeling tired, like I definitely recommend, you know, like take that little break, because that burnout is not going to go away just by pushing through it. I mean, and if it does, I'm really happy for you. I've yet to experience that. But so like those breaks are necessary. I mean, like for your mental well-being, but just remembering like why you're doing it is huge. And I don't know the quote exactly, but it's like, I'm going to work like nobody is now so I can live like nobody is later. Right. And like even that quote within itself is huge. And so like right now, like, yeah, there are times where it is not fun to do my W-2 all day and then do real estate for 7 hours. But knowing that the possibility of me like retiring before I'm 40 and being able to like volunteer all over the world after that is huge. Like I want to be able to do that. I don't want to be like, oh no, if I just don't do this or put this off for a little bit, then I can retire when I'm, I don't know, 65 again, right? Because like you push everything out and you don't realize like what that like ripple effect has. But like I don't want to have to wait till I'm 65 to be able to like do the things that I want to do, or to be able to help or be generous with the people I want to help.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's in Suzy and I, like COVID has actually helped. Another silver lining, right? It's really brought Suzy and I together and realized and really strengthened our why. And, you know, our why is like, we want to be able to retire, like as Suzy was saying, like early, so that we can spend more time together doing the things we love to do. Because we realize how much we enjoy being around each other, you know, being around each other like 24/7 for over 100 days straight. Right. And now we've been in 3 lockdowns together. We haven't you know, I mean, I've been gone for work for a couple hours or whatever, but like, other than that, like we haven't spent a day away from each other. Right. So, which is awesome. And just building that relationship and things like that. So we want to be able to continue to do that in the future. So that's kind of like our strong why. And then we really took a step back and we're like, well, we can help all these people who we want to help all these people with this mindset of like, you know, you work until 65 and then at 65 you enjoy your life after that, right? So our whole thing is like, we want to help people start checking off items on their bucket list now, not when they retire, right? There's this huge mindset, especially in American work culture. It's like, oh, you work as hard as you can until 65 and then you retire after that. And guess what? You're not as spry at 65 as you were at 35. And why waste the prime of your life working and why you could be enjoying it, right? So
yeah. And even like a big thing that I learned over here pretty quickly is that like in the States, like where I was working, a lot of the places like either had like 5 days of vacation time throughout the whole entire year, or maybe even like 10. And over here, I immediately got 25 plus all the bank holidays. Plus I get like Christmas to New Year's off, and I get the 4th of July off because it's like that whole week, because it's also an American company as well. Like that in itself blew my mind, because the people here can actually go and like take vacations. Whereas like in the US, a lot of people do not even get to like take advantage of having a week off, because if you have kids, you're doing like the sick days with your kids, or like taking off those work days for school. And that was so eye-opening. It's like, wow, like people in the States really, I don't know how many people actually do get to even get to retire at 65, you know, or even get to enjoy anything before then. Like it just blows my mind.
Well, it's a mindset, right? I mean, that's what we're, let's say, grown up to, right? Get a job, get the nice gold watch at 30. Well, that's kind of blown away, right? That doesn't happen very much anymore, but it's a culture shift. You're seeing all that a lot in companies, and also the younger millennials and the Gen X and stuff like that. They're starting to take that, like you talked about, Suzy, is I'm going to take the vacation now. Right. And that was a foreign concept with, let's say, with my father's generation, or even me when I was younger. I'm only 37, so I don't know where I'm saying younger, but anyway, you know what I'm saying? So you're younger, right? But it's a mind shift change of, hey, we're going to do things now. And I think the pandemic, as bad as it has been, obviously with the loss of life, but it has forced people and companies to really think differently, right? We can do this stuff, you know, from remote. You know, we joke about the 4,000 miles, but you know what? You probably accelerated your investing career by this COVID, because it forced you to go in and do something that you probably wouldn't have done. I mean, not that you wouldn't, but it's probably compressed your time frame.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, Pat. And the thing about it is like, we're proving our concept now and refining our processes and systems now. Like, so when we go live in Asia, Southeast Asia for 4 months and dive every single day, we can still be active real estate investors back in the States, right? Because we have the systems and processes in place now, right? Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, I mean, that's our whole thing, is like be able to, once we retire, travel, you know, live somewhere for 3 months, live somewhere for 3 months, preferably somewhere that's warm, and we can dive. That's what we really want to do. So,
yeah. Now you're saying scuba dive, or are you saying diving out of a plane that's still running? I want to clarify.
Yeah.
I just want to clarify.
Diving under
Okay.
under the ground.
Okay.
Under the
Except
water.
I'll jump out of the plane into the water if that becomes a thing.
There you go. Yeah, I've never understood the fact of getting out of a completely great plane and okay, there's the ground. But diving, I can see that. Okay, awesome. Okay, well, listen, thank you. Yeah, gosh, we're run over. I appreciate your time. And anybody have any other questions, comments? Because I do want to respect their time. I see you both in Thailand. There you go.
Nice. Yeah, we'll be there, Steve.
Yeah, just make sure the website's up and the email works, right? That's all we need, right?
Yeah, so that another thing too is like I'll just share this little tidbit, last little book here that we've read just recently. It's called Who Not How. And if anybody read that, but it's very powerful. So
Who Not How.
Who Not How. I forget who writes.
That's awesome. Thank you for that.
Dan Sullivan. Yeah.
Oh, I know Dan. Yes, Dan writes a lot of books, doesn't he? Goodness. Thank you for that. That's awesome.
Well, actually, the greatest thing about that is that he doesn't write the books. He gets his who to do it for him.
Yep.
Yes, the ghost writer. Yes. That VA is in Thailand. See, that's how he's doing it, right? Yeah. Interesting. Well, listen, thank you very much. Any other question? Let me real quick here. Double check, make sure we didn't miss any questions because I do want to respect your time and I appreciate you guys and gals being with us tonight. A couple of things. One, you can save the chat. What you can do is click on the chat box and then there's those three little buttons on the right-hand side if you're looking at your screen, and you can save the chat. And you can save everybody's contact information. So I'll give it a couple minutes here to go ahead and put your contact information in there. What I will be doing as well tomorrow sometime, be sending the chat out along with the recording of this call for everybody. So go ahead and put your information, your contact information in the chat. I'll give you a few more seconds there to do that. And so then go ahead, Michael, you put something in there.
I was just going to say, before we pop off, I was talking about checklists earlier. So we like Suzy and I like went through the 650 plus emails that we had from this last deal, from pre-LOI all the way through takeover and to now basically. And we took all that information and all the paperwork and everything like that, distilled it down into like one checklist. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's a pretty hefty checklist, 215 items, but if you can get that now, if you go to adventurousrei.com/checklist, and you can grab that checklist there. I dropped it in the chat.
Oh, thank you very much. That's going to definitely be helpful. Thank you, appreciate that. So go ahead and put your contact information, obviously, and like I said earlier, I'll send this chat out along with the recording tomorrow, and go ahead and save the chat. That way you can get the information, but I'll send it as well tomorrow. Thank you very much, everybody, for joining. Thank you, Suzy and Michael, for staying up late. Hopefully it won't impact your Thursday. Why don't you just take tomorrow off? Just go ahead. I'll call your boss.
I'm definitely sleeping in a little bit. Yeah.
There you go. There you sleep in. There you go. But listen, thank you very much. I'm very grateful. Thank you very much for joining, and thank you for sharing what you did. It was very enlightening and very a lot of different information I haven't heard before, and I appreciate that. And thank you for spending some time with us. And everybody, also thank you very much for coming on tonight and being here tonight with us. And with that, I'll leave everybody. And again, look for my email. And in 2 more weeks, we'll have another one. And you guys have a great night. And thank you very much.
Thanks, Pat. It was a pleasure being on. Thank you, everybody, for the kind words.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.